Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We are moving to the next stage of this pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. I'm Alma Angeles, and here are tonight's news. First, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed he has seen evidence the new coronavirus originated in a Chinese lab, and he threatened tariffs on Beijing over its role in the global pandemic. Let's take a look.
My question is, have you seen anything at this point that gives you a high degree of confidence that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the origin of this virus?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And I think that the World Health Organization should be ashamed of themselves because they're like the public relations agency for China.
Now, scientists believe the killer virus jumped from animals to humans, emerging in China late last year, possibly from a market in Wuhan selling exotic animals for meat. But speculation has swirled about a top-secret lab reinforced by internet rumors and right-wing shock jocks, and increasingly taken up by the U.S. president. Beijing has denied the lab was the source of the virus. And last month, Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said World Health Organization officials have repeatedly stated that there's no single evidence that the new coronavirus was produced in a laboratory. Now, when asked about reports that he could cancel U.S. debt obligations to China, President Trump said he could do it differently. President Trump has threatened new tariffs against Beijing as he claimed to have seen evidence linking the coronavirus to a lab in China's ground zero city of Wuhan. Again, let's listen in.
Well, I can do it differently. I can do the same thing, but even for more money just by putting on tariffs. So I don't have to do that, you know. It's approximately $1 trillion, a little bit more as I understand it, $1 trillion. But we can do that in a, I think probably a little bit of a more forthright manner. You start playing those games and that's tough. You know, we have the dollar to protect. We want to protect the sanctity of the dollar, the importance of the dollar.
Despite a truce in the long-running trade war between Washington and Beijing reached in January, tariffs are already in place on two-thirds of trade between the economic powers. Meanwhile, demonstrators, including some carrying guns, entered the Capitol building in the U.S. state of Michigan and demanded the Democratic governor lift strict coronavirus lockdown orders, as some lawmakers reportedly donned bulletproof vests. Take a look. Dozens of demonstrators crowded the lobby of the building in Lansing, where they demanded to be allowed inside the House chamber. State police, wearing masks, blocked them from entering. None of the protesters appeared to be wearing masks. Directly above me, men with rifles yelling at us, tweeted Senator Dana Polehanki, along with a photo showing 4 men, at least one of whom appeared to be carrying a weapon. More protesters could be seen outside carrying signs, including one depicting Governor Gretchen Whitmer as Adolf Hitler. It was the second time this month that protesters have demanded Whitmer lift lockdown restrictions in the state, which has seen more than 3,500 people killed by the coronavirus, according to a tally by Johns Hopkins University. On April 16, around 3,000 protesters, some of them also armed, descended on Lansing for Operation Gridlock, causing a massive traffic jam around the Capitol building. A man was shot dead by police after slashing several people at a shopping center in Australia's northwestern Pilbara region on Friday. According to police, the man stabbed one person at a motel and another outside a McDonald's in the city of Port Hedland before attacking 5 people at the mall. Western Australian police said officers shot and killed a man aged in his early 30s when tasers failed to subdue him. Western Australian Police Commissioner Chris Dawson said the attack was not believed to be terror-related. The man would fly into the city from Perth to work and then fly out again, he said. Now, witnesses said the man attacked people at random, including a woman, pushing a pram as he ran through the shopping center with a large knife. 5 people had been reportedly taken to hospital. All were in a stable condition. All right, let's check on the coronavirus situation around the world. Let's go to Switzerland. Ebi Ordinario joins us live from Zurich. Hello, Ebi.
Hi, Alma. Good evening there.
Good evening. And what are your updates for us, Ebi?
Hi. So here in Switzerland, as of today, we have 29,586 confirmed COVID-19 cases, 1,423 deaths. And according to the press conference on April 29, the Federal Council still categorizes the situation in Switzerland as extraordinary under the terms of the Epidemic Act, but has changed the color of the public awareness campaign from the color red to the color pink. Because the population was able to comply well with the measures and recommendations, various types of activities are now being permitted again on condition that precautionary measures are adhered to. Everyone needs to follow the rules of hygiene and social distancing. For example, keeping your distance, wash your hands thoroughly, to cough and sneeze into the crook of your arm, stay home if you experience symptoms, or to even work from home if you're able to do so. Several explanatory videos on hygiene and social distancing have been created and are shown on TV, online, and are also heard via radio to constantly remind the population. Further ease of measurements decided upon that will take place starting May 11, which will also be phase 2, which are the opening of restaurants, museums, retail stores, and markets. Primary and secondary lower schools are allowed to teach on site, and also the gradual ease of travel restrictions. Given that everything goes well, phase 3 will commence on June 8, which will allow gatherings of more than 5 people and also allow religious services. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Ebi, for that update, and we'll see you later for more.
Yes, thank you. From Zurich, Switzerland, I'm Ebi Ordinario. We live in interesting times.
Okay, let's head on over to Malaysia. The government is implementing a conditional movement control order. Let's find out what that is. That's joining us live from Malaysia, from Kuala Lumpur, is Ruby Tinawin. Hello, Ruby.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, starting Monday next week, almost all economic sectors and business activities will be allowed to resume business, subject to conditions and standard operating procedure. This was based on the announcement made this morning by Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. In a special address, Muhyiddin said the government will enforce a conditional movement control order beginning May 4th to ease the partial lockdown implemented in March to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. He added the decision is made following advice from the Health Ministry and after lengthy discussion during the Economic Action Council, National Security Council, and Cabinet meeting. According to him, the MCO had seen the country incur 63 billion ringgit in losses so far. If the partial lockdown continued for another month, losses would touch nearly 100 billion ringgit. So under the new conditional MCO, areas with red zones will remain closed. Industries and businesses that involves the presence of a lot of people, where body contact and social distancing will be difficult to exercise, will not be allowed to operate. That includes cinemas, nightclubs, entertainment centers. Religious activities and gathering, including Friday prayers for Muslim and gatherings at houses of worship, will also not be allowed. All sports and recreational activities involving large gatherings, again, are also prohibited. Any sports activities that involve close contact, such as football, rugby, swimming, and indoor sports, will not be allowed as well. Outdoor badminton, tennis, jogging, cycling, golf, running in small groups of not more than 10 will be permitted. Now, all educational institutions will remain closed. Interstate travel will still be barred except for work purposes. Members of the public are also prohibited from traveling for the Raya celebration. Now, in terms of work, The Prime Minister advised employers to implement flexible working hours to avoid too many workers present at the same time. And also, he urged employers to allow their employees to work from home, and also requiring husband and wives to take turns going to office. Now, even public sector workers are encouraged to work from home unless they are required to go back to office for meetings. Now, restaurants can reopen, but must follow social distancing. Likewise, from next week onwards, customers will be allowed to dine in at restaurants. However, table must be placed 2 meters apart, and the number of customers limited based on on table sizes. Restaurants are also required to register names of all customers, and that is to enable contact tracing if someone tests positive for COVID-19. They also are required to make sure social distancing are strictly implemented, and to provide hand sanitizing hand sanitizer at payment counters as well. And of course, number of people in public transport should follow social distancing. And to avoid crowding at public transportation facilities, the government proposes staggered working hours. All users of public transport are also advised to wear facial masks. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much for your update, Ruby. We'll see you soon for more. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Yes, reporting from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, this is Ruby Tinawin. We live in interesting times.
And from Hanoi, Vietnam, joining us live is Charlene Navaja. Hello, Charlene. What do you have for us today?
Hi, Alma. Good to see you again.
Good to see you
So
again.
before I begin
Yes.
with my report, we would just like to greet Brother Angelo Iranio V. Manalo a happy birthday. So from all of us here in EBC ASEAN Bureau. So now for my headline. A teenager recovers from COVID-19, but another patient relapses. A 16-year-old Hmong girl from a village in the northern mountainous province of Hazang first tested positive on April 7. After treatment at the Dongvan District General Hospital, she has now been given the all clear and has been moved into quarantine. But details released on Saturday have revealed another person who had previously recovered has now relapsed. So a 21-year-old man who has been studying in France and tested positive on his return to Vietnam. After recovering, he was released from the Cu Chi Hospital in Ho Chi Minh City on April 14 and told to quarantine at home. But after feeling unwell, he was tested again, and on April 29, results showed he was once again positive for COVID-19. According to the latest COVID-19 counts here in Vietnam, we don't have any new confirmed cases, so the number still stands at the total of 270, Alma. 219 already recovered and 12 are experiencing the relapse. But on a brighter note, Vietnam makes an effort to improve international trade policy. Executive Vice President of the Japan External Trade Organization, or JETRO, Hironobu Kitagawa, speaks to Vietnam News Agency about the country's efforts to improve its international trade policies on the occasion of its 45th National Reunification Day that was yesterday. During his talk, he was asked about Vietnam's socioeconomic development achievements over the years, especially after the Doi Moi process. Doi Moi means renewal process. Since the launch of the Doi Moi policy in 1986, the economy has drastically developed. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, Vietnam's GDP jumped from $5 billion in 1986 to $245 billion in 2018. It's the highest rate in ASEAN. He said one factor for the GDP growth is the success in drawing foreign companies to the country as well as expanding exports. When asked if he has any recommendations for Vietnamese leaders to promote sustainable development, he pointed out a survey conducted last year about the business condition of Japanese companies in Asia and Oceania. The business sentiment of Japanese companies in Vietnam was the highest within ASEAN. 63.9% of respondents answered that they intended to expand. Regarding the merits of the investment environment, the answers of market scales and growth potential and political and social stability ranked top with a ratio of both increasing from the previous year. This can be interpreted as praise of the stability of policy to open its economy to other countries and its governance system. Meanwhile, respondents were most concerned about increased labor costs, 61.1%, unclear policy management by local government with 42.6%, and high employee turnover rate, 38.6%, which were listed at the top of the risk related to the investment environment. And lastly, when asked about how to further strengthen Japan and Vietnam's good relation, Kitagawa said that both countries just need to be vividly aware of the potential of synergy born through combining the knowledge of Japan and Vietnam. With the birth of unicorns, particularly the VNG in the IT field, Vietnam's potential may be higher than that of Japan. The exchange of youth, such as university students and highly skilled human resources of both countries, is also important to promote synergy. Another field where synergy has the potential to be born is in the agricultural, forestry, and fishery industry, the largest in Vietnam. So around 37.7% of the country's working population are engaged in these industries. However, as it accounts for a little under 20% of GDP by industry, greater value must be added to it. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Charlene, for those updates. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, you too, Alma. This has been Charlene Navaja reporting live from Hanoi, Vietnam. We live in interesting times.
Eagle News, we'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Hi! Malapit na po magsimula ang Tag-isa ng Galing dito po sa Net25. See you!
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
And we're still monitoring the coronavirus situation around the world. Let's head on to Paris. Alia Garcia joins us live from France. Hello, Alia.
Hi, Alma.
Hi, how are you doing?
So,
Good to see you.
I'm good. Yes. I'm good, and how about you?
Oh, I'm very good too. Thank you so much for your time today. What are your updates for us?
So for COVID-19 updates in France, we are on week 6 of our lockdown, which started on March 17 and extended till May 11. As of yesterday, there are 129,681 confirmed cases, wherein 49,476 have recovered, and 24,376 deaths. Due to lockdown, France was not able to avoid the increase in unemployment rate. As the lockdown is closely coming to an end, the government has set up a progressive and controlled easing of the confinement. Due to the non-uniform spread of the virus, the lifting of the restrictions will also not be uniform. The first phase of The exit plan will have a duration of 3 weeks and runs until June 2. But with strict observation and evaluation during this period, the government will then announce the further steps to this deconfinement. According to the Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, by the time France has lifted the restrictions, there will be enough face masks which earned the country criticism for its shortage during the lockdown. More businesses can reopen starting May 11, but cafes, bars, and restaurants will remain closed. As for markets and shopping centers, they may resume to work, but local authorities have the choice to rule at the reopening. However, the Prime Minister has advised the employees working remotely. If this is not possible, then companies who cannot operate by teleworking are urged to set up shifts to be able to comply with the social distancing. Educational institutions will not open at the same time. Preschools and primary schools may reopen on May 11. As for some secondary education, they may reopen on May 18, and for high schools, most likely to reopen around the beginning of June. There are also regulations that need to be followed, such as maximum 15 pupils per class and mandatory face masks for pupils in the secondary education. Starting May 11, people will be allowed to make car trips of up to 100 kilometers, but above that, there will be required for justification. Using face masks on public transportations will also mandatory. All cinemas, theaters, and museums and concert halls will also remain closed after the lockdown. Beaches will remain inaccessible till June 1, and religious services are unlikely to resume till June 2. Regarding private and public gatherings, it will be restricted to 10 people, but festivals and sport events will remain closed till September 2020. So that's the update from Paris, France. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Aliyah, and we'll wait for more updates from there as we follow this developing story. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. And for Eagle News International from Paris, France, I am Aliyah Garcia. We live in interesting times.
All right, thank you. And over in Russia, the coronavirus cases has hit 114,000. That and more from our EBC correspondent from Moscow, Rodora Peroche. Hello, Dang.
Hi, Alma. Good evening there, and hi to all the viewers.
What are your updates for us, Dang?
Okay, on the coronavirus update as of May 1st, 2020, Russia reaches its COVID-19 infected cases with a total number of 114,431, total number of deaths 1,169, total number of recoveries 13,220. Those numbers make Russia the 8th hardest hit country in the world. It was noted that 44.5% of the newly found cases were asymptomatic. Coronavirus hits Russian markets. The latest on how the ruble and Russian stock markets are reacting to the coronavirus, financial markets have seen extremely volatility as the coronavirus continues to spread. The Russian economy has been rocked by the coronavirus outbreak and fears the fresh OPEC, or the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Country, oil production pact between Russia and Saudi Arabia, will not be enough to address a historic 75.2 Russian rubles, a gain of 1.2% overnight, and putting the ruble up to 6% over the last 10 days. The ruble pushed to its highest level in 2 weeks overnight as oil markets stabilized, While the official tally of coronavirus infections of this pandemic situation, Moscow Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov believes that Russia has sufficient potential to mitigate any negative consequences of crisis and to fulfill a social obligation to its citizens. This potential is enough to dampen any negative consequences of global economic crisis, to mitigate the impact of the current economic crisis, and to keep fulfilling social obligations in full volume, regardless of how difficult the situation becomes. An interview with RTVI spokesperson said the depth of the estimated precisely, and there hardly are economists who can forecast with a high degree of certainty that this or that sector of economy will be hit by a crisis in a month, 2, 3, or even 4. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Dang, for all that update. We'll see you soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Alma. Report to Dora Peroche, Times.
Okay, let's head on over to Japan. The country is preparing to extend its state of emergency over the coronavirus. Joining us live is Dennis Liu. Hello, Dennis.
Hi, Alma. Good evening to you and to all our televiewers. Japan Prime Minister Abe said Friday the government would plan for an approximately month-long extension of a state of emergency declared over the coronavirus pandemic. The Prime Minister put in place an initial month-long state of emergency for 7 regions on April 7th. He later expanded it to cover the entire country. But with the measures due to expire on May 6, Prime Minister Abe Shinzo said he had instructed his minister for the virus outbreak, Yasutoshi Nishimura, to plan for an extension. He also said an expert panel advising the government is reviewing the situation in different parts of the country. He said they will listen to their opinions and hope to make a decision on May 4th. Prime Minister Abe Shinzo said Japan had so far managed to avoid the sharp increase in infections seen in some other parts of the world, but cautioned that vigilance was still needed. An extension of the state of emergency had been widely expected despite the comparatively small scale of the outbreak in Japan, with nearly 40 infections recorded, 432 deaths so far. The state of emergency is significantly less restrictive than measures seen in parts of Europe and the United States. It allows governors to urge people to stay at home and call on businesses to stay shut. But officials cannot compel citizens to comply, and there are no punishments for those who fail to do so. Despite the relatively small scale of Japan's outbreak, there have been persistent fears about the spike in infections that could quickly overwhelm the country's healthcare system. Many governors made calls for the declaration to remain in place, citing fears that infections could spread further if the declaration is partially lifted. Doctors' associations have warned that hospitals are already stretching thin, with officials in Osaka even calling for donations of raincoats to serve as protective equipment for health workers stuck using trash bags. The government has also said it is increasing testing capacity but continues to face criticisms for the relatively low numbers of tests being carried out, in part because of stringent criteria. In other news, school opening in Japan is likely to be moved to September instead of this month, as Tokyo and 7 other prefectures see a possible month-long extension of the state of emergency issued on April 7th due to COVID-19. This after Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said during the lower house budget committee on Wednesday that the government is considering to change the school year from April to September given various factors. Abe mentioned he is considering the people as they urge him to come up with a decision. However, he needs to study a variety of options. Government officials with the ruling camp who support the idea of the revision could come up to solution the education disruptions caused by schools' temporary closures and fill in the gaps to continue to give opportunities for education. They also mentioned they would make it easier for Japanese students to study in foreign countries when their school year will start in autumn as well. Those who are against it pointed out that the schedules of recruitment and certificate tests would also need adjustments, taking note on the revision could affect the academic year, and the government fiscal year starting and ending months would be different. Last Wednesday, Tokyo Governor Koike Yuriko, together with Osaka Governor Yoshimura Hirofumi, had expressed support after the National Governors Associations and some prefectural leaders meeting, while others said introduction for this change this year would be too soon. The government is still studying the matter in a very comprehensive way, since the revision could affect its citizens as a whole. This is the latest for now. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Dennis, for your updates, and keep safe always. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
And over in Ireland, the government has already approved a plan to gradually reopen the country. That and more news from our EBC correspondent, Rowana Bianca Arino. Hello, Rowana. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Alma. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good as well. Thank you. Nice to see you too.
Okay, what are your updates for us?
So for my current restrictions introduced to deal with COVID-19 are expected to largely remain in place in the coming weeks, as the government will approve a plan to gradually reopen in Ireland. The plan is also expected to be subject to ongoing changes over the summer months, with individual measures open to alteration or reversal. However, there is pressure from ministers to ease the cocooning recommendations for those aged over 70 and widen the 2-kilometer travel restriction. Some TDs, or Táchtaí Dála, who are the deputy to the lower house of the Irish Parliament, have also called for hardware and DIY shops to reopen. The National Public Health Emergency Team will make recommendation to what Taoiseach, Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, called a roadmap to reopen Ireland. The government will also announce an overall package of supports to go in tandem with the easing of restrictions. Mr. Varadkar said easing restrictions would depend on the progress of COVID-19, along with healthcare capacity and resilience, testing and contact tracing capacity, the ability to shield at-risk groups, and the risk of secondary illness. He said the lifting of restrictions would be done in a stepwise steered manner, but restrictions may have to be reintroduced if it looks like the virus is going to surge back. It is expected that the existing restrictions will be in place for a number of weeks, expected to be a fortnight, past their initial May 5th expiry date. At a previous briefing for ministers, Chief Medical Officer Tony Holohan said the plan would be reviewed in 3-week cycles. Cabinet sources said that divisions between ministers who want to ease restrictions relatively quickly and those who were cautious has become more obvious, with one predicting the upcoming meeting may not be all plain sailing. The initial stages of the plan predict allowing the over 70s out for a walk on a no-contact basis, with sources previously suggesting that others may be asked to stay at home while cocooners are out. Meanwhile, there was no agreement reached in talks on Thursday on a proposed new national safety protocol to apply in workplaces. It is understood that detailed guidance will be given for workplaces in areas like social distancing and cleaning protocols, as well as around canteens and other gathering places. Office workers will be encouraged to work from home, and flexible working hours will also be encouraged when offices return to avoid overcrowding on public transport. Builders hope to restart the construction industry by picking up work in almost complete sites before moving to outdoor work on sites such as housing estates, and then moving to new estates. Businesses and manufacturing are expected to open in the early stages of the plan if they adhere to social distancing and health rules. The Health and Safety Authority and environmental protection officers from councils are understood to be tasked with ensuring such requirements are met. Ministers for Business Heather Humphreys told the Irish Parliament Assembly that all businesses must adhere to the guidelines when they are reopened. She said they would be backed up through inspections and enforcement using the full suite of resources available across the state. Separately, Minister for Justice Charlie Flanagan has said the Police Service of the Republic of Ireland is planning an extensive operation this bank holiday weekend to ensure that the public adhere to travel restrictions. Back to you, Alma.
Hello. Okay, so Rowana, nursing homes account for 50% of the coronavirus deaths in Ireland, according to new figures from the National Public Health Emergency Team. I don't know if you have right now, but could you give us a picture of a patient and senior care in Ireland, if you may?
So the Taoiseach, Prime Minister of Ireland, Mr. Leo Varadkar, also expressed a concern that people who need medical help are not seeking it. Mr. Varadkar said Ireland was now in 6th place in the world for testing per head of population, and 160,000 tests had been carried out. Currently, personal protective equipment is being delivered regularly to nursing homes here in Ireland, but there are concerns that in nursing homes with no COVID-19 cases, that there is a risk that someone who was doing the testing could bring it in.
And workplaces will be closed down for breaches of social distancing under the plans being considered by the government to reopen the economy. The Health and Safety Authority, or HSA, will be given new powers to inspect and shut down workplaces if they do not comply with the guidelines to be published soon for reopening businesses after the nationwide lockdown. Could you please discuss this and other developments on the road to reopening? What are the criteria for the reopening stages?
Yes, so in Dáil, the Prime Minister identified 5 criteria for future decision-making on restrictions. This includes the progress of the COVID-19, along with the healthcare capacity and resilience, testing and contact tracing capacity, the ability to shield at-risk groups, and the risk of secondary morbidity. So this roadmap to open Ireland is to a new normal is being developed, and it's on its work to be approved. However, the changes to the current restrictions will be made every 2 to 4 weeks and will not happen as fast as the restrictions were put in place. He warned that restrictions may have to be reintroduced if it looks like the virus is going to surge back. He said that they will find a way out of the tunnel, but we are still in the tunnel and have some distance to go to.
I also learned, Rowana, that you are an engineer. You work as a regulatory affairs engineer in a company that makes respiratory medical devices. Can you tell me more about this?
That's right, Paul. I'm a regulatory affairs engineer for a medical device company that is a global leader in providing respiratory devices. So they're focused on spirometry, which is a test used to assess how well the lungs work by measuring the air you inhale and exhale. So where these devices help in the current pandemic are for those who've recovered from COVID. As we know, one of the symptoms for COVID is breathing difficulty. So a set of preliminary testing would be needed to determine the health of the lungs, followed by the damage impacted by the virus. So these respiratory devices that we provide would greatly help medical professionals in diagnosing before the conditions of the patients worsen.
All right, thank you so much, Rowana, for your time, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care, everyone. I'm Rowana Bianca Arino, correspondent in the Republic of Ireland, and we live in interesting times.
Okay, let's go over to Australia. The country will consider early easing of coronavirus restrictions next week as the number of local cases dwindle. But first, let's get the latest from South Australia, the updates there. Joining us live is Dan David Amazona. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Hi, Alma. How is everyone?
Here, very good. Maintaining a positive attitude.
that's
Thank you for
good.
joining us. Okay, what are your updates for us?
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I bring good tidings because as of 8 p.m. for the 1st of May, it has been more than a week since South Australia's last confirmed case of COVID-19. And out of the 438 cases of COVID-19 in the state, 97% of cases have recovered. Talks of easing restrictions loom above the entire country as many Australians begin preparation for their transition back into normal life before the lockdown. The federal government has also recently advised businesses to prepare for reopening once lockdown has eased. Meanwhile, the healthcare workers on the front lines have been bolstered with more equipment and supplies in the fight against COVID-19. 1 million pieces of personal protective equipment is to be sent to South Australian frontline healthcare workers to better help safeguard healthcare workers from the virus. And more good news from the state as there are no patients left in intensive care units. And there are no more patients in the state of South Australia that are in critical condition. However, the state and federal government continues to preach caution and to not be complacent as the vaccine for the virus could still be several months away. And a second wave of infections from COVID-19 is still possible. In connection to this, the state and federal governments continue to encourage Australians to download the COVID-19 tracking app COVID Safe, which uses Bluetooth technology to notify users if they have been in contact with someone that has tested positive for the virus. Back to you, Alma.
All right. So, Dan, good news. Could you discuss a little bit the developments on the road to reopening? What are the criteria over there in Australia?
Okay, so the criteria is based on our Prime Minister Scott Morrison's three-point plan. So in terms of reopening the country, step one would be to establish a more extensive testing regime to test even those that have no symptoms, so testing both symptomatic and asymptomatic people. And the second point of his plan is to make sure that we have even greater tracing capability so that we can tell who has been in contact with whom. And the final point is that we need to improve our local response capability so that we can respond faster and better to those that have contracted the virus. So once we fulfill those three steps, then we can continue with reopening the country. I believe our Prime Minister stated that the country could begin reopening fully around the end of next month. However, of course, during these times, nothing is certain.
That's true. That's true. All right. Thank you very much, Dan. And we'll see you soon for more updates over there in Australia. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Alma. Thank you, everyone. So from Adelaide, South Australia, this is Dan David Amazona. We live in interesting times.
Indeed. All right. Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.